All righty. Well, last time we continued with Division E, entitled Motion on the Physical and Astral Planes, where we learned the astonishing fact, at least astonishing to me, that the 7 planes of the cosmic physical plane are each units of consciousness or life atoms which rotate on their own axes and are, quote, end quote, conform to that which is required of all atomic lives. So these planes are not just the environment in which we live our lives and through which we move in our journey of evolution, but are in fact living beings on their own evolutional journey. The same is true of the 7 subplanes of each plane, making 49 plane lives within the cosmic physical plane. This teaching is in the section called separation, which is the first effect of rotary motion. We then took a look at the second effect called momentum, which creates repulsion, thus allowing for the individual internal development of each atom, whether it be a planet, a human being, or an atom of substance. We then learned about the frictional effect of rotary motion, which instills vitality, coherence, the overall ability to function, and is the source of the latent heat of the atom. Friction also causes the final combustion or disintegration of the outer form. The fourth effect of rotary motion is absorption, which holds the, quote, secret of the dependence of one sphere upon another, and which, importantly, has its correspondence in the cycling of a ray through any plane sphere, suggesting that all the interconnections and interactions between atoms is a result of the vertical penetration by the energy of the ray sphere into the 7-fold plane sphere or sphere of matter. For human beings, the interpenetration of the sphere of ray energies into our 3 lower vehicles makes possible all human interactions and interconnectedness. This energy absorption happens through the negatively polarized north pole of the atom, where you find a slight depression, DK tells us, at the north pole of the atom. We then took a look at Babbitt's atom, which illustrates this north pole, and which DK describes as, quote, being the place through which flows the force which animates the matter of the sphere. And, again, this is, we're now finding, are these ray energies and the interpenetration of this ray sphere that creates this inflow of force. He then says, the spheres or atoms of any form whatsoever show similar correspondences and analogies, meaning that all atoms, from an atom of substance to a human being to a planet, are conditioned by these interpenetrating ray energies. And this takes us to where we left off last time. So let's start by rereading the passage we were in the middle of last time. So could we get a reader, please?
And Parker, would you like to read?
Sure would.
Great.
Every atom, though termed spheroidal, is more accurately a sphere slightly depressed at one location, that location being the place through which flows the force which animates the matter of the sphere. This is true of all spheres, from the solar down to the atom of matter that we call the cell in the body physical. Through the depression in the physical atom, the vitalizing force from without. Every atom is both positive and negative. It is receptive or negative where the inflowing force is concerned, and positive or radiatory where its own emanations are concerned, and in connection with its effect upon its environment. This can be predicted likewise of the entire ring pass knot of the solar system in relation to its cosmic environment. Force flows into the solar system from 3 directions via 3 channels: the Sun, Sirius, the Pleiades, the Great Bear.
Thank you. Okay, first, every atom, though termed spheroidal, is more accurately a sphere slightly depressed at one location, that location being the place through which flows the force which animates the matter of the sphere. So keep in mind that the term every atom includes the universal sphere containing all manifestation, galaxies, constellations, stars, planets, human beings, and atoms of substance, all of which have a depression at their north pole, as illustrated in Babbitt's atom, through which the cohesive vitalizing force streams. And, since DK has gone to great pains to introduce the interaction of the ray and the plane spheres, which he here tells us have correspondence in every atom, I think we can assume that the vitalizing forces that he describes here are ray energies. Quote, this depression is produced by radiation which proceed counter to the rotations of the sphere and pass downward from the north southwards to the midway point. So we have a correlation of the 2 teachings here, right? With this radiations proceeding counter to the rotation of the spheres. And we know that the ray sphere rotates from north to south and the plane sphere from east to west. Okay, and next up, this is true of all spheres, from the solar down to the atom of matter that we call the cell in the body of the physical. Through the depression in the physical atom flows the vitalizing force from without. Every atom is both positive and negative. It is receptive or negative where the inflowing force is concerned, and positive or radiatory where its own emanations are concerned, and in connection with its effect upon its environment. So the receptive pole nourishes the atom. For a human, that would include both the reception of prana and of the life-sustaining energies that stream in from the monad and soul via the sutratma. The lower, positive, emanative pole of the atom sustains the lesser lives that make up that atom. An example of this dynamic as it applies to human beings can be found in the repolarization of our etheric centers. When this repolarization takes place, the higher chakras, head, heart, and throat, become receptive to soul energy. And the lower chakras become radiatory and thus a channel for service rather than merely a means for gathering experience. Okay, if you have any thoughts or questions or ideas, Satori's sudden revelations, please share them with everyone. It's always more interesting to have a dialogue rather than a monologue. So anytime you have anything to share, let me know. Okay, next up. And so it goes that we have a hand.
Yeah.
Yo.
Yes.
Yes.
Every time I think of this, I think of Uranus.
Which is tilted over.
Yeah, it's almost 90 degrees off its true north-south. And
Yeah.
wondering how that influences it being directed toward the sun as opposed to something, 90 degrees from it. Just curious, the curiosity, the uniqueness, of course, of Uranus. And that's
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah, isn't there some question, DK raises a question about whether it belongs to this solar system at all? And
That
that
or
it, or Neptune, huh?
I think it was Neptune, maybe. And he said,
Well, yeah, go
so
ahead.
that's all right. Yeah, well, that's all I'm saying is just the oddity of it. And of course, then with Venus being upside down and spinning, right?
Yeah, so it makes you wonder, first of all, you know, do you have a universal north and south? It would seem to, in many cases, to be, the case, like, um, is it a true north sort of orientation, or is it a local north and south? Um,
Right.
it's very curious.
It says the North Pole does wander.
Our
We
North Pole does indeed.
have a true north as well as a magnetic north.
Yeah.
Perhaps we can see that sort of situation being expanded out into our solar system and looking at perhaps the same or similar situation.
Yeah, I think you'd have to look at um, this that those changes are very significant in terms of the nature of that which is received. Because since the direction changes, I mean, this idea of the precession of the equinoxes, which is of course what happens when the North Pole changes on the Earth, orients us to a series of constellations. And these were recorded in the Great Pyramid, these orientations. In fact, esoteric archaeologists, you could say, esoteric historians relate that orientation as a way of determining the age of the pyramid, right? It's that it could have been built at a time when a particular orientation to one of the constellations was in place, and so there's speculation about that. But, in terms of what we're talking about here, you really have to look at what energy is being received by those constellations that the Earth, periodically visits, you could say, And what would be really interesting would be to pull up a astronomical program and determine where Uranus is pointed towards. What if there are constellations? Is it always towards the sun? Do you know? Do you know about that? Is it oriented towards the sun? Its axis?
More or less, yes. I think it's pointed always that direction and spins as normal.
Well, one interesting idea around that is the idea that it's the final synthesizing planet before it itself, after synthesizing all the planets of the solar system, then synthesizes itself in the sun.
Right.
So, the two seem related to me.
Like it. The other thing that we've mentioned before in passing, and I don't know if you know of anything that's come forward. I've always been interested in where the other planets' north poles are pointing. What stars are they pointing at?
Exactly. Right. I remember once.
Talk about
It's unfortunately I've forgotten now, but the sun, the North Pole of the sun, which is a significant connection in terms of what it points towards. I remember looking at an astronomy program and determining that it pointed to a particular nebula, which is it what do they call it? The eye nebula or something like that. It looks like an eye anyway. I've forgotten. It's just been a few decades since we did this. But, this is a really interesting line of research here, to determine the constellations that are directly through the axes of each of the planets. You might learn quite a bit,
So that would be very interesting. That takes it out to another level to the one
Indeed.
about maybe said, and perhaps, and that could be interesting. Could be very interesting.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Let's see, where the heck am I? So I think we're here. Next, this can be predicated likewise of the entire ring pass knot of the solar system in relation to its cosmic environment. Force flows into the solar system from three directions via three channels: the Sun, Sirius, the Pleiades, and the Great Bear. So these three constellational energies, which represent the three aspects, flow into the receptive North Pole of the solar logos. Can we get a reader for this passage from just a few pages back in TCF?
In it.
In a manner inconceivable to us, the first logos brings in the influence of other constellations. When this first aspect is better understood, and the next mana man bantara, the work of the seven rishis of the Great Bear and the supreme influence of Sirius will be comprehended. In this present manifestation of the Sun, or the Vishnu aspect, we are concerned more closely with the Pleiades and their influence via the Sun, and in relation to our planet via Venus.
Thank you. So it's clear from this passage that the receptive North Pole of the solar system is ruled by the solar systemic first logos. Okay, back to the text. We learn in the next passage, in the next page, that the Pleiades is the source of electricity for our solar system, making the lineup of these two sets of three very suggestive. But interestingly, DK doesn't develop this relation further, at least at this point in the text. However, Michael Robbins did, and he gave us these thoughts. Could we get a reader, please?
Joe.
Hi.
Hi.
If we look for exact correspondence, we shall have the following. The Akasha will correspond to Sirius. Sirius is the scorcher and refiner of matter, transforming the mundane to the sacred. Electricity will correspond to the Pleiades. This is a well-known correspondence. Light rays of pranic aspect will correspond to the Great Bear. Since the Great Bear is considered the source of the seven rays for our solar system, this correspondence also makes sense. Energy or force flows into our solar atom from Sirius, the Pleiades, and the Great Bear, and is radiated along three channels as Akasha, electricity, and prana.
Okay, thank you, Joe, and thank you, Michael. Okay, so now we get into a conversation about the second of these three sets. You see it was a split page here. Yes, Joe. Maybe you need to unmute?
She had her hand up, but now she doesn't, but I'll see.
Okay, that's fine. Maybe it was just. Okay, so now we get into a conversation about the second of these three sets. You see it was a split page here. Yes, Joe.
She had her hand up, but now she doesn't, but I'll see. Okay, that's fine. Maybe it was just.
Okay, that's fine. Maybe it was just All right.
Okay, here I am.
Okay.
The very last sentence of MDR uses both force and energy. And the other day I asked you about Babbitt's figure, and you responded that it was purely force, as I identify with force. That is, it only dealt with the physical and not with a higher energy.
Yes. I don't hear a question yet.
Well, my question is that I feel I'm in doubt about whether energy itself coming from Sirius is impacting in the totality of what we're discussing right now.
Oh, okay. Well, energy and force has a lot to do with one's perspective, right? We receive energy from the soul, not only because it's of the second aspect and we're of the third aspect in our personalities, but because it is in its, you could say, in terms of consciousness, in a superior position to us. And that's usually the determiner. You know, for instance, a master of wisdom has his own force field that emanates from his etheric centers. From her level, it's force. It's a demonstration of force. When we have an experience of that force, we experience it as energy, right? So you have in other words, our own etheric centers are responsive to higher energies, you know, whether they be that of our souls or of an ashram or of a master or of the consciousness of anyone who's a higher initiate or whatever. But all of those entities on their own planes are emanators of their own force. So that's the general definition of that. In terms of within, for instance, Babbitt's atom, you could say that the north depression is a receiver of energy, and that the lower pole is a emanator of its own force, right? So it's more of one's perspective that determines the nature of it. Yeah,
Okay.
that's how yeah.
I don't have anything to add. It's
Okay.
just I'm confused at this point, and I wanted to see if there was a clarification in what MDR had
In
mentioned.
terms of this, what he says, energy or force flows to our solar atom from Sirius. Well, you know,
He's using them. He's calling them both the same, isn't he?
he's
Energy or force.
he's
Maybe not,
covering his
though.
bases here. You know, I mean, these are very informal notes, by the way. You know, he writes these on the fly as he went through, you know, pretty much all of Bailey's books, you know. And so he didn't go back and say, well, is it really energy or force, or is it just, you know, he didn't do that. A lot of times it's more informal notes. I would say more accurate, it would be energy, you know, because as the fact that it comes from Sirius makes it energy. In other words, our solar system would experience that inflow as energy. From the Syrian perspective, it would be an emanation of force, of Syrian force, right?
Okay.
Okay, that's how I understand it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, you bet. Okay, so let's see. Did we read this? These conversations sometimes throw me off. I don't believe we did yet. No, we didn't. Okay, can we get a reader, please? Not that I don't relish them, folks. You know, I'd always, like I say, I appreciate you, Joe, and everybody else that contributes, because it's always more fun, more interesting. And we usually get into, well, like we just did, we get into some clarifications that are useful. Reader, please.
Yeah, rabbit holes are good in the kill.
There you go. Yeah.
Kira.
Hello.
Hello.
I would here point out the connection or correspondence in this statement to an earlier one made when speaking of solar radiation and the channels through which it can be felt. These currents or radiations we call A, akashic, B, electrical, C, pranic. In considering the occult meaning of what is here suggested, one point and elucidation may be imparted, leaving the working out of the other two relationships to the student. The Pleiades are to the solar system the source of electrical energy. And just as our sun is the embodiment of the heart or love aspect of the Logos, who is himself the heart of the one about whom not may be said, so the Pleiades are the feminine opposite of Brahma. Think this out, for much is contained in this statement.
Thank you. So first, this is pretty straightforward. I would here point out the connection or correspondence in this statement to an earlier one made when speaking of solar radiation and the channels through which it can be felt. These currents or radiations we call akashic, electrical, and pranic. So I would like to take a, I'd like to go back into these earlier comments made, which come from earlier in TCF, and take a good look at those, especially because they happened before this webinar series started with me hosting. So bring us all up to speed. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Kirsten.
Yes. There exists in the sun, in the planet, in man, and in the atom, a central point of heat, or a central cavern of fire, a nucleus of heat, and this central nucleus reaches the bounds of its sphere of influence. Its ring pass not by means of a threefold channel. A, the sun. Within the sun, right at its very heart, is a sea of fire or heat, but not a sea of flame. Herein may lie a distinction that perhaps will convey no meaning to some. It is the center of the sphere and the point of fiercest internal burning, but has little relation to the flames or burning gases, whatever terms you care to use, that are generally understood to exist whenever the sun is considered. It's the point of fiercest incandescence, and the objective sphere of fire is but the manifestation of that internal combustion.
Thank you. And next reader, please.
Yuri.
The central heat radiates its warmth to all parts of the system by means of a triple channel, or through its rays of approach, which in their totality express to us the idea of the heat of the sun. 1. The akasha itself, vitalized matter, or substance animated by latent heat. Number 2, electricity, substance of one polarity, and energized by one of the three aspects logoic. To express it more occultly, substance showing forth the quality of the cosmic Lord whose energy it is. And 3, light rays of pranic aspect, some of which are being now recognized by the modern scientists. They are but aspects of the latent heat of the sun as it approaches the earth by a particular line of least resistance.
Thank you. And then finally, one more reading.
Lisa.
When the term channel or ray of approach is used, it means approach from the center of solar radiation to the periphery. What is encountered during that approach, such as planetary bodies, for instance, will be affected by the Akashic current, the electrical current, or the pranic current in some way. But all of these currents are only the internal fires of the system when viewed from some other point in universal, though not solar space. Excuse me. It is therefore obvious that this matter of fire is as complex as that of the rays. The internal fires of the solar system become external and radiatory when considered from the standpoint of a planet, while the internal fires of the planet will affect a human being as radiation in exactly the same way as the pranic emanations of his etheric body affect another physical body as radiatory. The point to be grasped in all these aspects is that one and all have to do with the matter or substance and not with mind or spirit.
Thank you. Okay. So a little background on these three currents that we've been looking at here. Called the threefold channel of solar radiation. The first of these is the Akashic, which we just learned is vitalized matter or substance animated by solar latent heat. This is the one that Michael, and by inference, decay tied to Sirius. Akasha is the mother aspect, the active, vitalized matter of the solar system that nourishes all forms, well, really, from which all forms draw their substance. It is found on the monadic plane and is thus the first manifestation of the sea of fire. So this threefold channel of solar radiation is a manifestation, pure manifestation of the third aspect from the cosmic perspective. And thus, as stated here, all these aspects have to do with matter of or substance and not with mind or spirit. But we might ask, how can Akasha and the higher forms of electricity, both found on the cosmic etheric subplanes, be aspects of latent heat, which we normally associate with the systemic physical plane? The key is given in this statement. All of these currents are only the internal fires of the system when viewed from some other point in universal, though not solar space, suggesting that within the solar system, then latent heat belongs to the systemic physical plane. So from a cosmic perspective, the three solar channels are all aspect of the sun's latent heat, right? Just as a human being's latent heat demonstrates on the systemic physical plane. The second of the threefold solar radiations is electricity, which is the manifested effect of the third ray of active intelligence, just as magnetism is the effect of the second ray in manifestation. Electricity is sevenfold, very much connected with Fohat, and thus manifests differently on each of the cosmic physical subplanes. Let's take a look at how it manifests on the four highest subplanes. Could we get a reader, please?
Scott, you want to read?
Electricity on the first plane, the logoic or divine, demonstrates as the will to be, the primary aspect of that force, which eventually results in objectivity. Electricity as vibratory impulse. Electricity on the monadic plane demonstrates as the first manifestation of form, as that which causes form to cohere. Electricity as light. On the third plane, that intelligent principle demonstrates as coherent activity, either systemic, planetary, or monadic, and also as the triple vibration of spirit, matter, intelligence, sounding as the threefold sacred word, or electricity manifesting as sound. On the fourth plane, this electrical force shows itself as color. It might here be asked why color primarily is spoken of as the Buddhic manifestation of electricity. We are employing the word color here in its original and basic sense as that which veils. Color veils the sevenfold differentiation of logoic manifestation.
So if, like me, you tend to think of electricity in terms of what we're seeing here on the left, in terms of its Fohatic expression, we see that it causes forms to cohere. It's originally the root of the vibratory impulse. Remember, we're told that this comes to us from the Pleiades, right? So as the vibratory impulse for manifestation itself, right? It causes forms to cohere on the second subplane, right? And at this level, it demonstrates as light, and then on the third, it manifests as the sacred word, which is of course formative, and then finally, it's manifest as that veil, which DK is here calling color, and suggests a connection with the rays as well, which veils all forms, right, including the forms beneath the fourth subplane. Okay, any thoughts or questions? This is just a synopsis of a topic that DK develops at length later in TCF, this question of how electricity manifests. You can tell just by the page numbers that I've grabbed these four basic definitions, but between pages 311 and 319, you have a lot of commentary. And then after this, he gets into how electricity demonstrates on monastic, astral, and physical levels as well. Okay, the third of the threefold radiations is pranic, the densest of the three channels of solar radiation, which you may remember humanity receives from a special group of golden-hued solar devas. We learned about this way back last year in the beginning of, I think it's in pages 70 to 80 in that area. But just as with Akasha and electricity, cosmic prana demonstrates through the logoic etheric body, which is found on the four cosmic etheric subplanes of the cosmic physical plane, at least the 2, 3, and 4. I'm not sure if it also demonstrates on on the divine plane. But, you know, if you go with as above, so below, we know that the prana demonstrates on the 4 subplanes of the physical for human beings. So I'm thinking that it does demonstrate on all 4 planes. Yeah, any thoughts, ideas, questions? All right, we're coming to this A major paragraph in TCF. It's actually even reprinted elsewhere. I think you can find it in Esoteric Astrology. But I'll just read it first. In considering the occult meaning of what is here suggested, talking about the 3 aspects up here, one point in elucidation may be imparted, leaving the working out of the other 2 relationships to the student. The Pleiades, and you know, here I think he's suggesting the relationship, you know, if you look over here to the page, between the 3 qualities, Akashic, Electrochronic, with the with Sirius, the Pleiades, and the Great Bear, leaving the working out of the other 2 relationships to the student. You know, with that statement, he really does suggest that there is a relationship. The Pleiades are to the solar system the source of electrical energy. And just as our sun is the embodiment of the heart or love aspect of the Logos, who is himself the heart of the one about whom not may be said, so the Pleiades are the feminine opposite of Brahma. Think this out, for much is contained in this statement. So we're going to do a deep dive into this little paragraph here. I found it to be extremely occult and difficult statement to understand. And I welcome your insights as we go through this, right? So we're going to take a deep dive. Let's first take a look at the statement's 4 elements, right? Look at them separately and analyze each one before considering how they might interrelate. So we can just become familiar with what he's talking about. So first up, the Pleiades are to the solar system the source of electrical energy. Said more specifically, the Pleiades are the source of the electrical vibratory impulse that sequentially manifests as light, color, and sound, right? All designed to demonstrate the logoic will to be. Taken at face value, this suggests that the Pleiades implements our solar logos's ability to manifest. So next statement. Just as our sun is the embodiment of the heart or love aspect of the Logos, well, the first thing you might do with this is go to the heart of the sun, right? And, you know, that's a valid conclusion. But because of his next statement, there is very much another possibility present. The Logos here cited is, speculatively, the Logos of the 7 solar systems of which ours is a part, and in which our second ray solar system acts as the heart center. We know that DK is referring to, and of course, again, speculatively, is referring to the 7 solar systems of which ours is one, because DK's next statement says, who is himself the heart of the one about whom none may be said. So our Logos is the heart center of the Logos of 7 solar systems, and these 7 solar systems together form the heart center of the one about whom not may be said. This represents an algorithmic expansion of heart energy. Right now, alternatively, you can go with the idea of this Logos here described as the heart of the sun, which is itself then the heart of the one about whom not may be said. There's no way to get a definitive answer based on the information we're given here, but either one could be a candidate for that. So finally, after these this three-phrase setup, we have this conclusion. So the Pleiades are the feminine opposite of Brahma. What? So the difficulty comes in relating this phrase to the three previous ones. The term feminine opposite suggests materialization, which would be the manifested aspect of Brahma, making Brahma, at least in relation to the Pleiades, the causal force of the causal source of the third aspect. Now let's try to interrelate these four phrases. And like I said, I'm happy to hear your thoughts on this. So first, we see a line of descent into manifestation described in the first and fourth phrases, with Brahma manifesting through its feminine counterpart, the Pleiades, which through its gift of electricity provides the means of manifestation for our solar system. So we have Brahma, the Pleiades, and our system, right? A pure will to be line of descent, right? Our next task is to determine how the fact that both our solar system and the logos of which our solar system is a part are heart centers, how this fact impacts the line of descent from Brahma through the Pleiades to our solar system. Put simply, what is the connection between the Pleiades and the heart that would compel DK to string these four statements together? So we get a clue from a stanza near the end of a treatise on cosmic fire. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Yeah. Tia.
The mysterious Alhas of the fivefold force unite. Their thought sink into meditation deep and link the first and third. The worlds emerge and rushing into forms prepared, pursue their cycles. The 12 pointed play their part and are the result of the communion of the one above the sun with one of the seven wise. The master of the sacred heart is he who builds a path between the sphere whereon his lot is cast and the great monastic orb. He builds it knowingly, calling in the aid of points of blue. These emerge from the heart of one of the seven.
Thank you. Okay, so the linking of the first and third is another way of saying the will to manifest, right? Which through the gift of electricity, the Pleiades enables for our solar system. The phrase, the communion of the one above the sun with one of the seven wise, possibly suggests a relationship between the seven solar systems of which ours is a part and one of the Pleiades, because the Pleiades are known as the seven wise. Since this great being is the heart center in the one about whom not may be said, thus making it a perfect candidate for the master of the Sacred Heart, who invokes the aid of, quote, points of blue, which emerge from the heart, of one of the seven, and which are, of course, the Pleiades. This connects the heart aspect of one of the Pleiades to the line of heart centers described here. But what does this double heart center have to do with the link between the third aspect, Brahma, and our solar system? One possible answer is that the life aspect that demonstrates through the will to be is anchored in the heart via the Sutratma. That's true for for human beings, and is also true for at all cosmic levels. So this links the will to be and the life aspect to the heart. This would be true on cosmic levels as well as human. So I'll just say in conclusion, we might say that the will to be facilitated by the Pleiades for our solar system through the gift of electricity is a progressive demonstration of Brahma, and that this will to be, facilitated by solar angels, is a manifestation of the life aspect, which is anchored in the heart via the Sutratma. All of this is just speculative exploration. MDR makes a comment, this statement given for pondering is not easy and will necessarily be the subject of much speculation. DK says, think this out, for much is contained in this statement. So, this is one of those unusual paragraphs that appears in TCF from time to time, which is really enigmatic in its portent. So if you have any thoughts, questions, ideas about, insights into the connections, then I'm happy to hear you. Yes, Joe.
2 questions though. First,
Okay.
from text, is Brahma the central sun around which our solar system is rotating? And then I don't know if NASA's answering one of the Pleiades, Alcyone.
Right. Yeah, actually, she may be answering because DK tells us, and actually even HPB stated that our sun rotates around the Pleiades, and that's the, you could say, the universal local center for our solar system. Of course, that rotation will in itself, we know, rotates around the galaxy. But, DK doesn't, he never talks about the galaxy except for once in a while he mentions the Milky Way. Like, for instance, he says it's a source for prana for our solar system, and that kind of statement. But yeah, so those could be related for sure.
Okay.
Anyone else?
And Joe.
Yeah, Joe.
Thank you. I'm wondering, between rays 1 and 2 as they come out of Sirius, and thinking that because my own orientation to Pleiades is definitely with the feminine, and I'm wondering, first of all, if electricity might be connecting us directly with the so-called masculine, the negative and the positive. Okay, so you follow me that far.
Yeah.
Another wonder that I had was, my goodness, the Pleiades are 7. In fact, does the relationship between, I'm going to say Sirius, a higher energy, and the 7 proceed in the order of 7, 6, 5, 4, that kind of thing, to the top? In other words, at different times, are there different ones of the Pleiades who are related to the highest? That's a curious question. Maybe I'll stop there. I had several questions. Idea, it's the feminine again, of course, the relationship of the Great Bear to the Pleiades is a 7 and 7. And so for me, that's the path that I have developed in my mind, is always emphasizing the feminine coming through the Pleiades. And as you might guess, it's very strong in my chart.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, the idea of a kind of yin, yang, yin, which is to say, the Great Bear as the positive polarity, the masculine first ray aspect, whose rishis have wives, quote unquote, in the Pleiades, which would be the feminine or negative polarity to the Great Bear. But then in turn, you have a third aspect that is manifested or gifted to our solar logos. One could even wonder if it's not a result of the combination of the Great Bear and the Pleiades. The Pleiades here acting as the mother aspect, able to then gift this electrical phenomenon to the solar logos. So there you definitely have, in the same way that the soul is, that when we are repolarize our centers, we are negatively polarized to our soul, so that we can receive from that quote unquote feminine aspect. There could be a relationship there. And the idea of of them cycling through the 7 wives, well, that's, I wouldn't know what to say about that. The relationship you would find, I think, articulated in the 7 names of the Great Bear, which esotericists have at least, well, DK2 has developed the qualities of some of those 7 Great Bear rishis, right? Especially the pointers. He says a lot about its relationship, its connection to Leo, and its relationship to Polaris. And so you would need to be looking at the negative polarity of those two in the Pleiades, but it really gets speculative because there's so little teaching about these. And I don't know what to say on your comment about Sirius. I didn't quite get your import on that, Joe. So, anyone else? Okay. All right. So, well, yeah, once in a while, it's interesting to do a very deep dive on this. I'm not at all satisfied, you could say, with my own conclusions on this paragraph. The first part of it, I think, is you can ponder on it and come into certain relationships. But this last statement, so the Pleiades are the feminine opposite of Brahma. How to relate that to the whole is I found quite challenging. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, can we get a reader, please?
Yeah. Tom, did you want to read?
Guess if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. Certain broad statements have been laid down here concerning the rotation of matter and the results produced in diverse spheres by that rotation. What is predicated of any one sphere of atom can be predicated of all if it is in any way an occult statement of fact, and we should be able to work out these 4 effects. 1. Separation or the repulsive effect. 2. Momentum or the interior effect. 3. Frictional environmental effect. 4. Absorption, the receptive or attractive effect. In every grade and type of atom, a solar system, a sun, a planet, a plane, a ray, the body of the ego, or a cell in the physical body.
Okay, so thanks, Tom. This is a summarizing passage that emphasizes the universal application of the 4 effects here shown of rotary motion: separation, momentum, friction, absorption, which basically are aspects of the life of the development of an atom, right? So any thoughts or questions? Next up, the third chapter of this division on motion on the physical and the astral planes, entitled The Qualities of Rotary Motion. And the subsections of this chapter are inertia, mobility, and rhythm, also known as the three gunas, tamas, rajas, and sattva. I like this illustration because the movement depicted for each guna is characteristic of its nature. Tamas, plunging into density, rajas, rising up through activity, and sattva, poised above in balance. So could we get a reader for the section on inertia, please?
Yvonne.
3 are the qualities of rotary motion. Every rotating sphere of matter is characterized by the 3 qualities of inertia, mobility, and rhythm. 1. Inertia. This characterizes every atom at the dawn of manifestation, at the beginning of a solar cycle, or Maha Manvantara, or 100 years of Brahma, at the commencement of a chain, of a globe, or of any spheroidal form whatsoever, without exception. This statement, therefore, includes the totality of manifesting forms within the solar system.
Thank you. So the gunas, hang on a sec. So the gunas progressively demonstrate rotary motion, with tamas, or inertia, characterizing the initial stage of a cycle. This applies to 3 progressive phases of a single unit of consciousness. Each of us move, even in one lifetime, through these 3 phases. And as we progress in consciousness, there's a progression through these phases. But it can also apply when comparing one kingdom of nature to another. For example, inertia characterizes the mineral kingdom in relation to the plant, and the plant kingdom in relation to the animal, and all of them in relation to the human kingdom. DK says, subhuman lives express the guna of tamas, or of inertia. They work blindly and have no ability to respond consciously to the plan. They are the sum total of the, quote, units of inertia, just as the human units are called the points of light moving within the square. So the points of light moving within the square seems to me, an apt description of the rajasic guna, or mobility, demonstrating through human consciousness. By extension, we might hypothesize that the 5th kingdom represents sattvic consciousness. When applied to the effect of one's spiritual activity on the form aspect, the gunas become expressive of the 3 principles. Could we get a reader, please?
Yep. Back up to the top. And Parker.
Okay. The attribute of inertia, or tamas, characterizes the lower personal self, the sheaths of the threefold lower man. The attribute of activity is the prime characteristic of the soul, and it is this quality which causes the intense activity and constant labor of the man as he seeks experience, and later as he seeks to serve. The attribute of rhythm, or balance, is the quality of the spirit, or monad, and it is this tendency to perfection which is the cause of man's evolution in time and space, and the factor which carries all life through all forms to the consummation. Let us bear in mind here, however, that these three qualities are the qualities of the substance through which the triple spirit is manifesting in this solar system. The nature of spirit itself we know not as yet, for we cannot think except in terms of form, however transcendental those forms may be. Only those souls who have attained the highest initiation and can pass beyond our solar ring pass not know somewhat of the essential nature of that which we call spirit.
Thank you. Any thoughts about this? So we can see here that these gunas, as they're called, represent stages of becoming, but they can be applied in many different ways. Decay is specifically applying them to the development of an atom from the point of view of the vehicle or the matter aspect. Okay, next up. Can we get a reader, please? I see a hand.
Yeah, Priya.
Or are you just raising to read?
Let us keep clearly in our minds that we are simply considering the three qualities of matter itself and are not considering consciousness. Inertia is the result of lack of activity and the relative quiescence of the fires of matter. These fires, during obscuration of pralaya, though latent, are free from the stimulation that comes from the aggregation of atoms into form and the consequent interplay of the forms upon each other. Where form exists and the laws of repulsion and attraction are coming into force, making radiation therefore possible, then comes stimulation, emanative effect, and a gradual speeding up, which eventually, from within the atom itself, by its own rotary movement, produces the next quality.
Thank you. So first, let us keep clearly in our minds that we are simply considering the three qualities of matter itself and are not considering consciousness. So even though, for example, sattva demonstrates on triadal levels, this demonstration is the quality of one's triadal vehicles, not of the consciousness aspect. Thus, the gunas are the means of progressing through the sheaths, not only through death and rebirth, but through progressive initiations by which humanity uses inertia, mobility, and rhythm to move upward through the stages of matter, through the levels of matter, to progressively higher subplanes. Next. Inertia is the result of lack of activity and the relative quiescence of the fires of matter. These fires, during obscuration or pralaya, though latent, are free from the stimulation that comes from the aggregation of atoms into form and the consequent interplay of the forms upon each other. So decay here contrasts inertia, which is the quiescence of the fires of matter during manifestation, and pralaya, during which the quality of the fires are not just quiescent, but completely latent, because there's no form aspect for these fires to demonstrate through. Next, where form exists and the laws of repulsion and attraction are coming into force, making radiation therefore possible, then comes stimulation, emanative effect, and a gradual speeding up, which eventually, from within the atom itself, by its own rotary movement, produces the next quality. So, the first condition, inertia or tamas, derives its quiescent quality from pralaya that has it has just emerged from. Then, as the laws of repulsion and attraction begin to increasingly exert their influence, the tamasic unit becomes increasingly rajasic through rotation and eventual radiation. Any thoughts or questions? Next up, can we get a reader, please? Section on mobility, which is also rajas.
Yeah, Janet.
2. Mobility. The inert fires of matter produce rotary movement. Eventually, this rotation results in radiation. The radiation of matter, the result of the dual heat, produces necessary an effect upon other atoms in its environment. It matters not whether that environment is cosmic space, systemic space, or the periphery of the physical body of a man. And this interaction, interplays, causes repulsion and attraction according to the polarity of the cosmic, systemic, or physical atom. Eventually, this produces coherence of the form. Bodies or aggregates of atoms come into being or manifestation and persist for the length of their greater or lesser cycles until the third quality is brought into definite recognition.
Thank you. Any thoughts? Okay, so first up, mobility. And I'm going to reread this. Never hurts to go back over this material because it can be quite dense. So this is that rajasic phase of, you could say, atomic growth. During this phase, the inherent fires of matter produce rotary movement. That's the key first phase. Eventually, this rotation results in radiation. The radiation of matter, the result of its dual heat, produces necessarily an effect upon other atoms in its environment. It matters not whether the environment is cosmic space, systemic space, or the periphery of the physical body of a man. And this interaction and interplay causes repulsion and attraction according to the polarity of the cosmic, systemic, or physical atom. In this passage, DK gives us a list of those qualities that move an atom from inertia to mobility. Increased rotation, results in radiation, which makes possible an interaction and interplay with other atoms, which then demonstrates as either repulsion or attraction. Finally, eventually this produces coherence of form. Bodies or aggregates of atoms come into being or manifestation and persist for the length of their greater or lesser cycles until the third quality is brought into definite recognition. So finally, we add coherence to the list. Coherence of form, which occurs through the law of attraction. This stage is brought about by the influence of the second logos, still a form aspect, but there's an influence from the second systemic logos, who constantly reconfigures forms so that they may be a more fit vehicle for the expression of the indwelling spirit. The law of attraction leads to form building, resulting in congeries of atoms. The law of repulsion allows the indweller to maintain its own boundaries. Both laws are in effect at the same time, achieving a balance commensurate with the spiritual level of the indwelling jiva. Okay? All right, next up. Can we get a reader, please?
Yeah, I think two people
Oh, yeah,
Um,
hands.
Janet has a question.
Yes, Janet.
I believe you made a comment about this doesn't deal with consciousness, but I kept thinking about the process of yoga.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Okay.
it makes perfect sense when you show the radiation and et cetera, so they're all down.
Right.
The
Well, first of
way,
all, nothing would happen in this solar system without the influence of consciousness. But it's, in this case, it's the influence of consciousness on the vehicle of manifestation. So how does that consciousness actually, what does it look like? What does that influence look like within the vehicle? You know, and what happens is changes occur within the vibratory quality of that vehicle, and more atomic matter is taken in as a result of these higher influences. But here he really is focusing in on the nature of the effects on the vehicle. So yeah, Rajasic yoga, for instance, you still are in a body, right? And the influences of those practices are going to impact your vehicles, your physical, etheric, and mental, astral and mental vehicles, right? And it's that he's focusing in on right here. About 3/4 of the book is all about consciousness and finally the life aspect. But in this 220 some page beginning section, he's focusing in on the matter aspect. Does that answer your question? Anyone else?
yes.
I saw another hand. Was there somebody else had a
Yeah,
comment, question?
Ria, but I'm not sure if she just wants to read.
It was just to read.
Oh, great. Thank you. That's where we are. Would you please?
Number 3, rhythm, or the attainment of the point of perfect balance and of equilibrium. This point of perfect balance then produces certain specific effects which might be enumerated and pondered upon, even if to our finite minds they may seem paradoxical and contradictory. The limitation lies with us and with the use of words, and not in any real inaccuracy. These effects are the disintegration of form, the liberation of the essence which the form confines, the separations of spirit and matter, and the end of cycle, whether planetary, human, or solar. Thank you.
You, Ria. So first up, rhythm, or the attainment of the point of perfect balance and of equilibrium. This point of perfect balance then produces certain specific effects, which might be enumerated and pondered upon, even if to our finite minds they may seem paradoxical and contradictory. So equilibrium transcends and thus nullifies the influence of all the pairs of opposites that are intrinsic to form expression and are developed through the tamasic and especially the rajasic phases, right? Thus, through death of the old form, which equilibrium brings about, new conditions are created, and which makes possible the creation of a new and more fit vehicle. Next up, the limitation lies with us and with the use of words and not in any real inaccuracy. So language is an expression of lower mind, which is inherently dualistic. Thus, ultimately, it is incapable of describing subjective or spiritual reality. We talked about this before, this inherent limitation, which DK is always comes up again, and he's very, very often describes the limitations of language, right? Anyway, let's take a look at the first 4 effects caused through the achievement of rhythm, or sattva. Can we get a reader?
Joe.
A, disintegration of form. B, the liberation of the essence which the form confines. C, the separations of spirit and matter. D, the end of a cycle, whether planetary, human, or solar. E, the production of obscuration and the end of objectivity or manifestation. F, the reabsorption of the essence and the merging again of differentiated matter with the root of matter.
Thank you, Joe. DK gives us a graphic example of this sequence earlier in TCF. Can we get a reader, please?
You're
As the point of race equilibrium is reached, so planetary equilibrium will likewise be attained, and in planetary attainment will come the equilibrium that must mutually take place between the solar planets. When they attain a mutual balance and interaction, then the system is stabilized and perfection reached. The even distribution of prana will parallel this balancing in the man, in the race, in the planet, and in the system. This is but another way of saying that uniform vibration will be achieved.
Uniform vibration is a result of this sattvic stage, right? And as a result of this uniform vibration, we have release, right? We can go back here and look at these. As a result of this uniformity of vibration, there is no point of tension to hold the form in form, and thus it disintegrates. And then there's a liberation of the essence, obviously a separation of spirit and matter, and this is always indicates the end of a cycle, at whatever level. What follows is pralaya, or obscuration, and obviously the end of objectivity or manifestation. But of course, that's just temporary until a new, more fit vehicle is taken for the next cycle. So then you have the reabsorption of the essence, that would be in pralaya, and the merging again of differentiated matter with the root of matter. So 2 directions. The essence goes into the drop of water is once again part of the ocean. The separated, imprisoned jiva becomes part of the universal life aspect. And on the other end of the scale, that particularly conditioned, differentiated matter once again merges with the root of matter. That is, it just, you could say, disintegrates into the little lives of which it forms a part, right? So pretty clear the nature of this. Next up, we have the last 3 effects of rhythm and the concluding paragraph. Can we get a reader, please?
Kirsten.
The end of time and space as we understand it. It was point G. H, the unification of the three fires and the bringing about of spontaneous combustion, if one might so express it. E, the synthetic activity of matter in the three types of movement, rotary, spiraling, cyclic, and onward progression, which unified movement will be produced by the interaction of the fires of matter, of mind and of spirit upon each other. When the point of rhythm or balance is reached in the solar system, in a plane, in a ray, in a causal body, and in the physical body, then the occupier of the form is loosed from the prison. He can withdraw to his originating source and is liberated from the sheath which has hitherto acted as a prison. And he can escape from an environment which he has utilized for the gaining of experience and as a battleground between the pairs of opposites. The sheath of form of whatever kind then automatically disintegrates.
Thank you. Okay, first, the end of time and space as we understand it, because formless pralaya or abstraction, which is what sattva takes the incarnated unit into once it's achieved that balance, is outside time and space, and thus beyond the influence of the cosmic physical plane. So therefore, the end of time and space ends. Right. Next, the unification of the three fires and the bringing about a spontaneous combustion, if one might so express it. More questions here than answers. What does that look like? But we might surmise that electric fire, solar fire, and fire by friction unite in the spontaneous combustion thus created suggests achievement of an equilibrium just within the realm of the three fires that first cancels out and then transcends the third or matter aspect altogether. This reminds me of noise canceling technology, which determines then sounds force the exact opposite frequency of the noise being canceled. The combination of the two opposite sounds results in silence, just as we might suppose the unifying of the three fires results in obscuration. Next, the synthetic activity of matter in the three types of movement, rotary, spiraling, cyclic, and onward progression, which unified movement will be produced by the interaction of the fires of matter, of mind, and of spirit upon each other. So a synthesis of the rotary, spiralic, and direct motions is created by the synthesis of the three fires. Important here is the causal aspect of the three fires. It's DK doesn't tell us the effect of this synthesis of movements, but we can assume that it creates the same canceling out that occurs with the synthesis of the three fires. For in pralaya, fire and motion become latent and thus non-expressive. And finally, we have when the point of rhythm or balance is reached in a solar system, in a plane, in a ray, in a ray, in a causal body and in the physical body, then the occupier of the form is loosed from prison. He can withdraw to his originating source and is liberated from the sheath which has hitherto acted as a prison, and he can escape from an environment which he has utilized for the gaining of experience and as a battleground between the pairs of opposites. The sheath or form of whatever kind then automatically disintegrates. So this applies to one's final liberation from the cosmic physical plane at the seventh initiation, but also to the many intermediate pralayas that occur between globes, rounds, and chains. There are also relative pralayas, such as, our own human death experience, where one retreats into one's soul vehicle. But this is not that same level of true pralaya beyond the form world altogether, since the indwelling jiva is still participating in the form aspect of the higher mental plane. In all cases, a new, more fit vehicle is eventually taken upon emergence from pralaya. This time through, the term in array caught me. I didn't see that the first time when I was analyzing this, So here he is, suggesting that the ray itself is a unit of consciousness, right? So when this point of balance is reached in a ray, then that ray, to follow, is loosed from its prison, its form aspect. That's really a ponder on this kind of a statement, because from our perspective, rays are energies, but on their own plane, they demonstrate through a vehicle, right? Okay. Any thoughts, questions? All righty then. We now move into the next chapter, entitled Rotary Motion and Symbolism, my favorite. So can we get a reader, please?
Did I do Kirsten already?
No, I don't think so. If not, she can read again. It's okay.
Yeah. Usually go in order, but I think
Rotary motion and symbolism. Every rotating sphere of matter can be pictured by using the same general cosmic symbols as are used for the portrayal of evolution. 1. The circle. This stands for the ring-pass knot of undifferentiated matter. It stands for solar system, or the body logoic, viewed etherically. It stands for planet, or the body of a heavenly man, viewed etherically. It stands for a human body, viewed likewise etherically. And it stands for them all at the prime or earliest epoch of manifestation. It stands finally for a single cell within the human vehicle and for the atom of the chemist or physicist.
No, you were right first time. Physicist.
Physicists, yeah.
So, we can assume, that these final examples also are when seen etherically. So, the single cell within a human vehicle, when seen etherically, or even the atom of a chemist or physicist when seen etherically, right? Because the atom, when seen physically, there is a circular component even to physical atoms, but I think he's really focusing in on the etheric manifestation here. Okay, so first, every rotating sphere of matter can be pictured by using the same general cosmic symbols as are used for the portrayal of evolution. On pages 4 and 5 of The Secret Doctrine, HPB introduces a series of symbols, you can see them scattered throughout these 2 pages, that represent progressive stages of manifestation. But we'll continue in the text for now before bringing in HPB's teaching on figures that DK introduces here. So first, the circle. This stands for the ring pass knot of undifferentiated matter. It stands for a solar system, or the body logoic, viewed etherically. It stands for planet, or the body of a heavenly man, viewed etherically. It stands for a human body, viewed likewise, etherically. And it stands for them all at the prime or earliest epoch of manifestation. It stands finally for a single cell within the human vehicle and for the atom of the chemist or physicist. So the very first lines, literally the first written words of the Secret Doctrine, also reflect on the nature of the circle. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Miri.
An archaic manuscript, a collection of palm leaves made impermeable to water, fire, and air by some specific unknown process, is before the writer's eye. On the first page is an immaculate white disc within a dull black round. On the following page, the same disc, but with a central point. The first, the student knows to represent cosmos and eternity. Before the reawakening of still slumbering energy, the emanation of the word in later systems. The point in the hitherto immaculate disk. Space and eternity and pralaya denotes the dawn of differentiation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this Secret Doctrine passage expands on two of DK's statements. Quote, this stands for the ring pass knot of undifferentiated matter. That's Mula Prakriti, right? Or Akasha, and in terms of our cosmic physical plane. And it stands for them all at the prime or earliest epoch of manifestation. Right? So he develops this circle, all the way down to the atom of a chemist or physicist, but he also recognizes, as SD does in her opening, as HPB does in the opening of the Secret Doctrine, this more primordial representation of the circle. So Gerald Massey gives us a further teaching on the meaning of the circle. Could we get a reader, please? Before we go, let's, Stefan, do you have a question? Or are you raising to read?
Yes, I'm raising to read.
Great, thank you. Would you please?
The universal mother of beginnings is one on earth, as in heaven, because she was the first form taken by space. And next, the first described of a circle as a sign of time, making the circle as a type of the cycle is the figure of all beginning. Nenput, the word for never, means more literally no circle or uncircled, without boundary, boundless, because there was no period of time. On the other hand, at the age, eon, he, is signified with the circle for its ideograph. This figure being drawn in heaven by the constellations of the 7 stars. The Great Bear was therefore personified as the genitrix and bringer force of the primal birth of time. The creation was here affected by, in, and as the circle of the 7 stars.
Thank you. Okay. Any thoughts or questions? Okay, we're going to stop here because we're going to have, and also we have a couple of hands, so that'll take us this last couple of minutes here, this session.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Jerry's got a question, I think.
Yo, Jerry.
Could you, I like that last slide
Hey,
with
coming up.
Polaris. Could you relate that to the Pleiades and the Great Bear?
Well, this is the Great Bear. We have
Okay.
Ursa Major is the Great Bear. And so the ancients recognized this system, Polaris stands, in the center of our night sky, and that you can literally tell time by the position of the Great Bear as it rotates around this circle. And, Gerald Massey, talk about an esoteric author. This guy's incredible. That's why I so often include him in my quotes, because he just gives a different perspective. So he relates that idea to the universal mother of beginnings, but yeah, you can literally tell the time of night through the position of Ursa Major in the sky. You have to, of course, adjust yourself to the aspect, the angle that the Great Bear is forming. But you can see here how it works. It just rotates around.
Yes. Is there time for a tag-on question?
Sure.
You were in the part on electricity emanating from the Pleiades.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of today.
Yes. I was trying to link that actually with the secret doctrine and the circle and the next the point in the circle and the emanation of energy, or the first manifestation is that related to electricity?
Well, I like that idea. If you go here to this statement, electricity as vibratory impulse on the first subplane of the cosmic physical plane, right? That would be like coming out of the point at the center of the circle, which, is really represented by the first subplane of the cosmic physical plane, right? That is, remember, these planes are spheres, and it's mind-bending to try to figure out how they interrelate as spheres. But there certainly is a relationship between the point in the center, which is the emerging impulse, and that what's called the sea of fire. So, and then from there would be a demonstration of electricity, to keep on with your suggestion, outward to the periphery. And since electricity demonstrates at all 7 levels, you can use the circle with the point at its center to describe the 7 levels of electrical manifestation.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Helpful.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Anyone else? Okay, well, that does it for today. Thanks very much. I really enjoyed this session.